So I'm just setting up the recording and we are go. Now, so welcome to the session, everybody. And just a few kind of housekeeping things about this session. We've run, this is our fourth session, and I'm hosting it for Stuart and assisting Stuart in his Focus Braille display presentation. If I could ask if anybody is on speakers, now I don't think they are, there wasn't a lot of background noise when people were unmuted there, so that was great. We've had a bit of an issue with if people are on speakers, we get a lot of background noise. So if you can use a headset, it's much better for these things. Even just, I find my phone headset works well. If you're on a PC, plug in your phone headset, it's got a mic on it. That has worked well. So when you're on a webinar like this, the best thing to think of is like you're in a meeting. So if you could maybe put phones on silent or and just make sure that you are muted. Now everyone's muted at the moment except for me, haha. But if we have questions, just make sure you're muted if you're having another conversation, because it does make it very hard to hear the question and to answer it. And yes, I will be kind of trying to manage that myself as part of the session. So please don't be offended if I mute you forcefully. It's for the greater good. Okay. Just an introduction to Zooms. So we have various ways of interacting. We will open up for questions at times during the session, and you'll be able to ask away. We also have a chat facility, which usually comes up on the right-hand side of your screen. And so you can press Alt-H if you would like to say something or ask a question during the session. And I'll do my best to keep an eye on that. And when we break for questions, I'll go back over the chat. I will put various information on the chat as well during the session for your reference. There's also a facility to raise your hand or lower your hand. So Alt-Y, if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. And I'll keep a note of that if that's during the session, but we will let Stuart get to a break in things before we kind of open up the mics again. And you can also mute and unmute yourself during those question sessions by doing Alt and A. So if you think, I'm not muted, think Alt and A. You can mute yourself or unmute yourself. Yep, I think that's about all. Oh, just in the chat, just be aware that you can go back and read the chat if you've missed something. So you can do Alt-H for the chat, then you can tab to the message history and have a read of that. You can also send a message to a particular person. If you do Alt-H for chat and tab twice, you can choose to send a message to a particular person on the session. I think that is all. You might hear Zoom announce things. If you've been on one of these sessions this week and you're a screen reader user, you'll know just to press Control for that. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Stuart. Now, Stuart needs no introduction. So we're going to be talking about Braille and Braille displays today, and Stuart has pretty much been a Braille user, I'd say, from birth. Would it be, Stuart? So I'll just unmute you there. So, yeah, so Stuart knows Braille very well. He's the best expert on these things because he not only knows these devices inside out, he's also an avid user of them every day. And Stuart, just to say, Stuart is the country manager here in Dublin for Sight and Sound Technology, and he's my boss. So, if you want to take away, Stuart, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sharon. What an introduction. Hello, everybody. And as Sharon says, welcome to the Sight and Sound Summer School Session 4. We've been having great fun this week, meeting virtually lots of people online and talking about all sorts of things technology-wise, which ignite and excite our passions here at Sight and Sound. I want to thank Sharon for facilitating. I also want to thank my colleague Rob, who's sitting here beside me, who's doing the very important job of managing the video for today's session. For those of you who can see, we have video, so you will be able to see the Focus Braille displays that we talk about. And of course, for those who are Braille users and do not have vision, please don't worry, because I'm going to describe everything. I think by way of just prefacing this session, I suppose I would say that Braille literacy, as far as I'm concerned, as somebody who's been totally blind since birth, is crucial. I could do a whole session and just talk about Braille and not go anywhere else, and I'm not going to, but just to say that without literacy skills and without the chances and opportunities I had at a very young age to learn Braille, I wouldn't be in the position that I am today, and I wouldn't have access to this type of technology and to be able to, I suppose, show people how this technology can be life-changing. And there's, all sorts of research that has been done previously around Braille and improved access to literacy, and there is a very strong linkage, and this is not just in Ireland and the UK, but throughout the world. There is a very strong linkage between Braille readers and those people who are successful in finding employment. So that's kind of the backdrop, and that's why when we were planning these summer school sessions, that was something that I really wanted to sort of make the point of when we were going to talk about the Focus Braille displays. Now, interestingly, my notes today, just for people who can't see, you hear a bit of paper rattling, and for those who can see, you'll hopefully see some Braille. I still love paper-based Braille as well. It has its place, although we're going to pretty much exclusively talk about refreshable electronic Braille today. But I have some notes here on paper Braille to guide me and make sure I don't go off on a tangent, which I have a tendency to do. And as Sharon said, we will break a couple of times during the session so that you can ask questions. And of course, it'll plenty of time at the end as well to ask questions. So, Focus Braille displays have been around for a while. They're made by Vispero, who are formerly Freedom Scientific, Freedom Scientific are still a sub-company, I suppose, of the group, and Freedom Scientific, of course, make JAWS. We have two versions of the Focus Braille display here today, although there are three. There's the Focus 14, which is the baby of the family, I suppose, the Focus 40, which we're going to use mostly today, and the Focus 80. And the main difference is the numbers of cells, of Braille characters that you can get on each of these units. There are some other differences, and I'll mention a few of those as we go along. The Focus 14 is the device that I have in my hand now. It's very slimline. You could pretty much put it in your shirt pocket. And it's really designed to, well, it can be used with anything, but it is, I suppose, primarily designed to be used with a mobile device. When you're out and about, you can have this thing with you using your phone. I find it really useful when I'm in noisy environments and I just can't hear the speech on my phone, or it's not convenient for me to do so. Maybe I'm in a meeting, or maybe I'm somewhere where speech is not going to work, and I can read on the Braille display. The Focus 40 is this device that I now have in my hand, and these are quite light. The Focus 40 is obviously longer to accommodate the 40 Braille cells. At each end of the Focus Braille displays, by the way, whether it's 14 or 40, there are these rubber ends, I suppose, so that if they drop, they hopefully won't get damaged. And that's a new feature in these Focus Braille displays. And the Focus 80, obviously, which we don't have here, will be twice the length of the Focus 40. And the 80 is obviously for people who are using a Braille an awful lot. Whilst it is longer, it is still quite light, although not obviously as portable as the Focus 40 or 14. So the Focus 40, 14 and 80 refreshable Braille displays have 40, 14 or 80 refreshable Braille cells and cursor routing buttons above each cell. And I'm just going to take a moment to explain the concept behind cursor routing, and apologies to those people who may already know about this. But cursor routing is one of those things that I always explain to people on day one because it's such a useful function. When you're using Braille, I think efficiency is key, being able to access information quickly, and in the case of large documents, being able to navigate those documents quickly. And when you use cursor routing keys and you are reading Braille text, you can press the cursor routing key just above the cell where your finger is placed, and that will automatically jump the cursor to that point in your Braille document. So if you have a lengthy document that you're reading and your real cursor, your PC cursor isn't following, the cursor routing key will automatically jump your cursor to that point in the document so that you can begin editing or making changes or doing whatever you want at that point. Continuing on with things that the Focus displays, they all have two panning buttons. Panning buttons are used to literally pan the Braille or move the Braille forward and back, and we'll talk a little bit about panning in a while. Two rocker bars. Rocker bars are used to move the Braille display up and down one line. They can also do other things. Two selector buttons, and we'll talk a little bit about selector buttons in a while. Two shift buttons, we'll also talk about shift buttons in a while. And in the case of the Focus 80 only, 4 panning rockers. Nav rockers and nav mode buttons are at each end of the Braille display, and they have specific functions that I will talk about later when we look at the Braille display with JAWS. There's a menu key located just above the spacebar, well, in between the spacebar and, in between the Perkins keys, the dots 1, 2, 3, and 7, 4, 5, 6, and 8. There's a menu button midway in the Braille display, because the Focus, unlike previous versions of the device, does have a menu and a couple of little applications, and we'll go through the menu in a little while. The menu allows you to do things like setting calendar and clock, changing the dot firmness, configuring when the Focus display will go into standby mode, etc. The Focus display has connectivity, USB, and 5 Bluetooth connections simultaneously. This is what makes this display really nice. So you can move between connecting to your phone or your computer or maybe a tablet, or I've even managed to do it with my Apple TV, which has been kind of interesting because Braille support is quite new on the Apple TV, but it does work. And finally, the Focus has what's called a Scratchpad. We'll come back and talk about the Scratchpad later on. It can take micro SD cards up to 32 gigabytes and configurable status cells, which can be located at either end of the Braille display. And status cells can be used to give you different status information when you're reading text. There is, of course, we mentioned Bluetooth and multiple Bluetooth devices. There is support for select cell phones or mobile phones. Whether you are using iOS or Android, you can connect the Focus display to your phones. And we will spend a little bit of time today looking at iOS. Not huge amounts of time, because actually we could spend a whole session just introducing the Focus. So I'm going to be kind of moving through at a fair speed, but of course we do have, as Sharon said, time for questions. So just a little bit then about the layout and where things are, and just for the purposes of the video, I'm picking up the Focus 14 again because it's the easier one to carry, or to hold rather. On the left-hand side of the device towards the front is a tiny little slot for the micro SD card. When you get your Focus Braille display, the micro SD card will be fitted already, so you don't need to do anything with it. But if you do have occasion to take it out, you can do so by just pushing your nail against the little slot and the card just pops out. I'm doing it right now, and you push it again and it pops in. There is the power button, which is protruding outwards. You hold the power button in for about a second or so, and the Braille display will change, and the Braille you'll feel Braille coming on and the Braille display will turn on. And towards the rear on the back is a USB-C connection. This is used for charging the Braille display and for connecting via USB to a computer. Obviously, if you connect via USB, the Braille display is always charging. And on that note, you can expect typically about 20 hours of battery life from the Focus. Now, on the top of the Braille display are your Perkins style keys. On the left-hand side, dot 1, 2, 3, and 7. And on the right-hand side, dot 4, 5, 6, and 8. I mentioned the menu key here, which is in between dot 1 and dot 4. Cursor routing keys go right across over each Braille cell. And at either end of the Braille display, as I mentioned, these nav rockers and selector buttons, or nav selector buttons. And then on the front side of the Braille display, depending on what display you have, the layout is slightly different. So on the Focus on the Focus 14 and the Focus on the Focus 14, the layout is slightly different. So from left to right, you have your left selector button, left rocker bar, left panning button, left shift key, right shift key, right panning button, right rocker bar, and right selector button. So the panning keys are right beside the shift key. The Focus 40 has a slightly different layout. So on the Focus 40, you have the left panning button, the left rocker bar, the left selector button, left shift key, right selector button, right rocker bar, and right panning key. So the panning keys on the Focus 40 and 80 are just over to the very right and left hand side of the display, respectively. Okay, just for the moment, I'm going to stop very briefly in case anybody has any questions about the layout, about the physical layout of the display before we go any further.
Okay, thanks for that, Stuart. It's very clear. I've always wondered what some of those buttons were. I'm going to unmute everybody and just see if there's any questions there so far.
Yeah, hi, it's Phil here.
Hi, Phil.
Yeah, mine must have an older one because mine doesn't have a menu key between the dots 1 and 4.
Yes, so you, I think, mentioned you got yours in 2013. So these Focus displays, I do believe, came out in early 2018. So yeah, you definitely have the older model.
Yeah, so I don't have the menu key then. So is that quite a disadvantage then, or?
Excuse me. No, not at all. I mean, the older model, there's a couple of things. Obviously, it doesn't have the menu, it doesn't have a clock, it doesn't have the Scratchpad, which I'll talk about in a while, and it doesn't have the multiple Bluetooth connections.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions there, or?
sorry, you said power button's the one on the left of the device, is it? And the charging port is beside the power button, is it?
Charging port is just behind the power button, Dave. So the power button kind of protrudes out, and the USB charging port is just behind it, USB-C port.
Yeah, just kind of I don't know, away from you, I suppose.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, towards the back. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
There's a couple of round things there, but I don't know if they're ports or are they just round.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The little, no, they're not. They don't have any.
Okay.
They don't have any function. I know the ones you're talking about.
And the SD slot was somewhere?
Yeah, it's at the very front. It's a tiny little slot that you'll just get your nail in. If you put your finger on the power button and move towards the front, keeping along the same level, you'll just hit a little groove. And if you put your nail in there, you'll push it out. It pops out. It's tiny. It's very, very small.
But you said it has one in there anyway, yeah?
It has one in there already. Yeah, they all come with SD cards fitted.
Do you know what size that is? Or I assume it's plenty big anyway.
Yeah, I actually don't know that.
Cool.
Don't appear to have that on mine either, Stuart, I don't think.
No, yours is, so again, the older model, I should have said that as well, the older model doesn't have the SD card function.
Okay.
That's only used by the Scratchpad.
Okay, sorry, one other thing, just to the left and the right of the Braille cells, there's kind of rocker buttons. Are they the up-down rockers?
Yeah, so
Are there two sets of those then? Because there's ones on the front as well.
yeah, so there's nav rockers and rocker bars. The ones at the top are called rocker bars. So they can be configured to move by line, sentence, paragraph, or display panning. The ones at the bottom just go up and down a line at a time, and the ones at the bottom will be used to move between menu items on the Braille display menu.
Gotcha.
And the other thing just worth saying about all those controls is they will have different functions depending on what screen reader you use. So for example, on iOS, a lot of these functions on the Focus have very little functionality actually, because you'll do your work with the Braille keyboard.
There's two little buttons above the two rockers as well.
Yeah, so they're called nav selector keys. So with JAWS, they will move between navigating by sentence, paragraph, line, or panning, display panning.
Okay, cool.
I guess, Stuart, you're going to show how this works.
I am indeed, yes.
Which will be really useful then a bit later on. Yeah, because I'd like to see that too.
Okay.
How all these buttons work. There's lots of them. Okay. Are there any other questions there? Before
Phil, how much is the 80 character as a matter of interest?
I honestly do not know. Perhaps James might be able to give us a price on that before the end of the session.
I'll take a look now and I'll give you the price at the end.
Okay.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James. Yeah.
Okay. Just to mention, to give Stuart a little break there, I mentioned this is the 4th out of 5 of our summer school series this week. And tomorrow afternoon, we will be having a tech surgery, whatever that is. No, it'll be just generally answering people's questions, technical questions. I know that there was, they're on to me, hang on. I know that there was a question about JAWS cursor and how JAWS cursor works on the PC, so we'll probably be covering that. But any other questions you have generally over the week, we'll be happy to discuss tomorrow afternoon. So that's 3 till 4:30, the same sort of time. Okay, if there isn't any other questions, we'll maybe carry on.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. So we're going to look at the
Hold on a second. Oops. Sorry, Stuart, I muted you accidentally.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. So we're going to look at the Focus Display's built-in menu, just to see what we can change and how some of these functions work on the device. I'm using the Focus 14 just to demonstrate this. I'm holding it in my hand, but just to explain what happens when you turn on these Braille displays for the first time. The first thing that happens is that your Braille display gives the time, assuming the clock has been set correctly, will give the time, and you'll see the hour followed by the minutes, followed by the seconds. And you'll see the time in computer Braille. So it may look rather alien to some people. So for example, the colon will be dots 1, 5, and 6 when you're doing something like, say, 15:26, for example. On the Focus 40, you will also see towards the right-hand side of the Braille display the level of battery power remaining. On the 14, you don't see that because the Braille display is not big enough. But if you press the right panning button, once you turn on the display, I'm going to do that now, I now see 100 and the percent sign, which is dots 1, 4, and 6. So this Braille display is fully charged. If you're using the Braille display connected to any screen reader, whether it's Windows, iOS, or anything else, you can at any time press the menu button, so that's in the midst of the Braille keys. You can press the menu button to temporarily check the battery. So it's a really handy thing to be able to do. So you're wondering, you're maybe doing something on your computer. I wonder how much battery level I have. press the menu button and the battery percentage will appear on the Braille display, and press any cursor routing key to go back to controlling whatever you were connected to. When the focus gets to 20% and then 5% thereafter, so 10, 20, 15, 10, etc., it will give you occasional warnings that the battery is low, and in that case you should connect it to a charger. So I've turned on my Focus 14. I can see that I am 100% charged, and I'm going to press the menu button, which is, as I said, in between my Perkins keys. The very first option I get on the menu button is my Focus displays Bluetooth ID or Bluetooth name. And you might sort of say, well, why do I really need to know this? And to be quite honest, you don't need to know this if you only are connecting to your Focus and you're not around anybody else who has a Focus. But in here, we frequently have lots of Focus devices sitting around, or we're working with people who have, and we need to know which one we're going to connect to if you're showing somebody how to connect their phones, for example. So this gives your Focus unit's unique Bluetooth name. So mine, for example, I can see here is Focus BT FH0E7C2D. That's unique to my Braille system. So that's just how you find out what your Focus Braille display's Bluetooth name is. There are two ways you can move through the menu options, by the way. One is to use the rocker bars, which are at the bottom of the Braille display, one on the right, one on the left. Or the other, which is the way I tend to do it, because I'm one of these people who does most of the things by keeping my hands on the Braille keyboard, is to press the equivalent of the tab key, which is space with dots 4 and 5. So that's what I'm going to do, but you can do either. There are many ways to do everything, and none is right or wrong, so whichever you wish to do. The next option in the menu is the repeat rate. This controls how quickly the Focus repeats when you hold down the nav keys or the rocker bars. So you can change the rate if you want the Focus to respond faster. The next option is called rest, and this will determine when the Focus goes into standby mode when it has not detected a key press. And you can program for 5 minutes, 15, 30, or 45, I do believe. So whichever you wish to choose. And if you wanted to change any of these, by the way, you would press enter. The next option is the clock, and I know somebody was specifically interested in the clock, so I'll just talk a little bit about how to set the clock for a moment. When you want to set the clock, you press enter, and you are placed on the hours. So you're going to use the nav rockers at the bottom to move up or down through the hours that you want, to move to the hour that you want, rather. And then you're going to press the tab key with space and dot 4 and 5, and you're going to go to set the minutes and do that, and press the tab key with space and dot 4 and 5 and set the seconds if you wish. And once you have the time set, you can press enter. Dot 8, by the way, is enter. I should have said that on the very right hand side of the Braille keyboard. The next option is called calendar, and calendar is a kind of an interesting way to describe this option, because essentially what it does is it allows you to set the date. So the Focus Braille display has a built-in clock for date and time, and actually you can display the date at any time on the Focus display by pressing the menu key plus the letter D for date. You set the date in the same way as you do the time. You press enter. You use the rocker bars to navigate between to the first is the day of the week, or of the month rather. You tab to the month, select the month, and then you tab and select the year, and again press enter or dot 8. The next option is called firmness. This controls how firm the Braille dots will be when you are using the Focus internal menus or messages or Scratchpad. And note, this does not control the firmness for when you're using the Focus with a screen reader. You can do this in JAWS in a separate setting, but you can't do it, for example, with iOS or I believe with Android either. So firmness in this context only controls the firmness of dots when you are using the Focus's internal memory. Next, we come to the connections menu. This lists all the active connections you currently have. So if you have made some Bluetooth partnerships, and we'll talk about making partnerships in a moment, if you have made some Bluetooth partnerships, you can go here to find out what you have, and you can also switch to them. But there's a much easier way you can do that as well. If you are using your Focus Braille display and you're, for example, controlling your mobile phone on Bluetooth, on your first Bluetooth slot, and you want to switch to maybe your computer, which is on your second Bluetooth slot, you hold down the menu key and you press keys number 1 to 5. So if you wanted to switch to number 2, for example, you'd hold down the menu key and press number 2. To switch to the third Bluetooth slot, you'd press number 3. If you want to switch to your USB connection, you press menu with dot 8. So if you have an Apple TV as your fourth Bluetooth peripheral that you connected, then you press menu key with dot 4. You can't determine which slot a device gets. They just go in order. So the very first device you connect will be in slot 1, the second will be in slot 2, etc. The next option on the menu is called language, and this controls the language for the Focus Braille displays, menus and messages. So there's a couple of languages which to choose from. We have ours obviously set to English. And the last option is the Scratchpad. I'm not going to say too much about the Scratchpad now. I'll come back to it in a little while when we have the Focus connected to JAWS, so that you'll be able to see a little bit how the Scratchpad can be useful. If I want to exit the menu without doing anything, I can press space and Z, and that's a kind of a universal keystroke that's used in a lot with Braille in order to exit out of something without making changes. The Focus menu is one of these things that you'll probably configure at the start, set a few things to your liking, and you may very well not touch it again. One useful feature in the Focus menu, certainly that I've found useful, is if you want to delete Bluetooth pairings, or you want to just scrap everything and go from the start, there's an option within the connections menu that says clear all, and it will clear all your Bluetooth connections and bring you back as though the display came from the factory with no connections. Now I'm going to continue, and then we will stop in a couple of minutes. I'm going to continue and talk about iOS and Braille with iOS. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about how to control Braille displays with iOS, because that is a whole module in itself. I'll just say a few things, I suppose. Apple have had Braille support in iOS, I think, for about 6 years now, and it has matured and been refined over time. It has had, certainly, I think it's fair to say, its challenges and its idiosyncrasies or inconsistencies, but it is certainly getting better all the time. Unlike Android, you don't need to download anything else in order to use Braille. It is built in. Once you have VoiceOver turned on, you can use Braille very quickly. I have my Focus 40 already paired with my iPhone, but for the purposes of, I know there's 1 or 2 people who've never done this before and who are interested to know how to do it, I'm just going to talk through the process you would use to connect your Braille display to your phone for the very first time. So you would turn on your Braille display, just leave it on, you don't have to put it anywhere, leave it where it shows the clock. And then on your iPhone, navigate to the VoiceOver settings. So you do this from VoiceOver, not from Bluetooth. When you get to the VoiceOver settings, navigate to Braille. And from within Braille, towards the very bottom of the long list of Braille options, and there are many of them, there's an option that says choose a Braille display. And there's where you will see your Braille terminal showing up. Hopefully it will be seen. And if, for example, you have Bluetooth turned off on your phone, on the iPhone, it will tell you, Bluetooth is off, do you want to turn this on? Once you choose Focus, you'll be asked to enter a pairing code the code for all the focuses is 4 zeros. And with iOS, you've got about 15 or 20 seconds to enter that on the touch screen. So you need to be pretty quick, enter the pairing code, and after that, your phone is connected to your Braille display. One thing to note, you need to turn on your Braille display before you unlock your phone in order for a connection to be reestablished. So you can't, you know, have the phone unlocked and then suddenly decide you're going to turn on the Braille display. It won't work like that. Similarly, when you're using the Focus with another connection like a computer and you want to switch to your phone, have your phone locked before you switch and then press the power key to unlock it. So I'm just going to very briefly, and hopefully you will be able to hear my phone. I've actually, at the moment, on my Focus has actually gone to sleep because I was leaving it for so long. But I now have my Focus on. I'm unlocking my phone.
44.
There's
Notifications.
There's my phone, I hope. And there's a little sound there, which means my Focus is connected. And I'm going to now press my Bluetooth, my menu key with number 3, because my Bluetooth connection is on number 3.
Messages. 16 minutes ago. Meep Smith. Phone. Press home to unlock. Button.
I am now navigating using my Focus Braille display. I'm pressing spacebar with dot 4 to move across my screen.
Phone. Press home to unlock. Button.
And I'm on the unlock button. If I unlock with my Braille display, I'll have to enter my passcode. So I'll use Touch ID here because it's quicker. And I'm now on my Braille. I'm now on my home screen.
Phone. 1 new item.
And it says phone, 1 new item. I can navigate now with my space with dot 4 to go through the options.
Social networking apps folder. Calendar. Media apps folder. Safari. Cloud storage folder. FaceTime.
If I want to access an option, if I want to double tap, I can press spacebar with dots 3 and 6. So let's have a look at my email.
Messages. 1 unread message.
And I know that my email application is in the dock because that's where I keep my email because I use it a lot. To jump to the bottom of the screen, and this is a universal Braille display command, it's spacebar with dot 4, 5, and 6. So I'm now going to go back to my email.
Mail. 4 unread emails.
4 unread emails if I press spacebar with dot 3 and 6. I'm now in my email application. If I choose, I'm in a very quiet place or I want a bit of privacy, I can press spacebar with M.
Speech off.
And now my speech has been turned off and I'm now just using Braille on my iPhone. And space and M again
Speech on.
is a toggle. Space with the letter H will bring me back to my home screen and brings me back to the dock. And just one other keystroke worth pointing out, because we really could spend the whole day doing iOS and Braille. Space with the letter S for sugar.
Mobile data. 2 of 4 bars. Signal strength. Status bar item.
This brings me into my status bar.
1 new item.
Very useful to be able to check status messages. Space and S will do that for you. Now, I'm going to, it's probably an appropriate place to break because we've probably given quite a lot of information there, and I'm conscious there may be some comments or questions. So, Sharon, I'm happy to take questions now if there are any.
Thanks, Stuart. If there's any questions there, you can do Alt-H and put them into chat, or you can talk away there now.
Hello, I got question for the clock. It says that when you press enter, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Okay, yeah, and then it displays the hours. So then I did it, and then it says 28:00. It says press the rocker to change the hours. So I press the rocker, and it still says 28:00. But the only thing that I cannot understand is this, I can just read the Braille, like width and, yeah, double width, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 5, 6. So I wonder what does it mean?
I'm just going to try to get to where you are. Just give me one moment so I get to the clock on my display here. Where is it? Clock. Okay. So you're on. So you're looking at
To set the hours.
04. So on mine, I see. So you're looking at status cells. Do you see a colon with 02?
This is on mine. This is 28 colon 00, and then at the end of the number is 24. Maybe it is set on 24 hours because when I received this unit, I have not changed any time because I don't know how to set, you know.
Okay, so mine, for example, now see, this is computer braille, so you have a .6. So I'm on 0. So 0 is in computer braille dots.
Yeah.
So I'm on 04. So
But
if you rocker bar up, the
five,
is changing.
356, and then but to the left, there is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that on 2 cells.
Yeah. So the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the 0. So 04 would be 4 a.m.
Okay. So that's the I cannot understand.
Yes,
you
and
know.
that's why the 0 is not changing because you're going up hour by hour. That's what's
okay.
Okay. So you change, for example, I've set mine now to, I actually need to change mine to, what is the time? Is it 15?
15:50. Yeah.
15,
so
50.
I press the rocker, the left one that I'm. So now.
So I'm actually doing it on I'm pressing the right rocker bar. I'm going up to 1549, 1550, and I've put 00 the seconds, and I'm pressing enter. And I'll just see now, my clock now says 1550, 03, 04, 05. If you'd like, Niamh, because I have your email address, I will drop you an email afterwards.
Yeah, okay.
And perhaps if it's convenient for you, I can give you a call.
I can email you.
You can email me,
you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's no problem at all.
Because my right rocker don't work.
Okay.
On just the left one, you know, the front, not the top.
Okay.
The top don't work. You know, only the left rocker that works on mine to set the clock.
If you drop me an email, we'll try and find a time to talk afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
I'll put Stuart's and mine email into the chat just for your reference.
Yeah, I'm using phone though. I'm not using.
But you have Stuart's email.
You have my email. Yes, you emailed. Yeah.
I'll stick it in for good measure anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions there?
Hiya, am I coming through?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Hiya, Stuart. It's the other Stuart here. It's Stuart Beveridge.
Hiya, Stuart.
Hiya. Nice to speak to you at last.
You too.
Sorry, I'm just muting Jaws there. Just a quick question. Was it space with .36, which is the equivalent to like the double tap? You know, if you were to activate an item.
Precisely. Yes.
Yeah. Is that a universal command or is that kind of just strictly to the Focus? Because I've always used like on other devices, I've used, you know, like the cursor routing keys to.
You can do that either. I'm one of these people who just never takes my hands off the Braille display. But yes, you're right. It's not just for the Focus. It's universal. So if you have a Braille Sense, for example, connected to your phone, you can do the very same thing.
Right. I've picked that up today because I didn't know that the space with .36. That was a command I wasn't aware of, interestingly. So thanks very much.
No problem at all.
Excellent. Okay, any other questions there? Excellent questions. I have to say that clock completely lost me on that clock.
Actually, it's fair, and I understand Neem's. It is not easy to grasp, and it took me a while to get my head around it as well. If I can also direct people towards the, and I was saying this to Dave actually just before we started the session, if I can direct people towards the Focus user manual on the Freedom Scientific website, is a really well structured HTML document, but it's very well written and really goes step by step through everything that you need to know about the Focus much more thoroughly than we've done today.
Maybe I can find a link to that.
Yeah, I think actually, Sharon, if you stick into Google, literally Focus Blue user guide, it's I think pretty much the first result that comes up.
Focus 14, 40 and 80
That's
Blue
it.
Users Guide.
Yeah.
Blue Users Guide. Yeah.
So that's definitely worth for people to have a look at if you want.
I'll just put that link onto the chat. There now. Okay. Any other questions about? Right. Oh, and Stuart, I needed to remind you about cleaning mode, but I don't know if you wanted to do that at the end.
Yeah, let's do it now actually, because it's a good question. So and this came out of a query that Phil had before we came on air, and about cleaning your Braille display and how you should do it. And James mentioned the cleaning mode, which is a really good routine, which I use. I clean mine about, I'm gone a bit sort of religious about this, but I clean mine about twice a month. So there's a couple of different diagnostic tests you can do with your Braille display, but putting it into cleaning mode, you can, I'm going to grab the 14 for this. So for those who can see, I have the Focus 14. I'm holding down the last two router keys together, and I'm holding on the power key. And what's going to happen now, it's just happened, all the cells are raised, and when I press the bottom of the nav rocker at the top of the Braille display here, all the Braille cells have gone down, so I get my little surgical wipes. And by the way, there's a store here in Ireland anyway, a chain called Tiger. I don't know if you guys have them in the UK, and Sharon and I have bought these screen wipes, which we use because they have alcohol in them, to clean Braille displays. So you clean the Braille display with all dots down, you bring the Braille back up by pressing the up part of the nav rocker at the top, all the cells come back up, and the little nav selector buttons at the top, when you press these, the Braille will start to dance, as James says. And if I just hold it to the mic, you can hear it dancing. It's even got a bit of river dance or something in it. So you can then check that all the Braille cells are working, and I normally give them a clean and then press the up and down. So Phil, that will work on your older Focus as well.
Yeah, I just tried it actually. I couldn't get it. I've just turned it off again. Couldn't get it to do it. Go through that again.
Yeah,
sure.
That would be good. Yeah.
So holding down the last two cursor routing keys, hold them down together. While they're held, hold in the power key. Wait till the Braille display turns on and release it, and you should feel all the dots raised, all the fours, as they say.
Oh yeah, got it now. Yeah.
Now, Phil, the top of the Braille display, you have your nav rockers and nav selector buttons.
Right.
Down button. Press the bottom of the nav rocker, and all the cells should go down.
Yep.
And press them up. Press the up of the nav rocker, and the cells should come up.
Well, hang on. There's two cells that haven't gone down. Everything's gone down except
so there's your problematic cells that you were talking about, I suspect.
Yeah. So what do I do now? Press the up rocker, did you say?
Yeah, the up rocker to make them come up. But if you press then the little selector button above either of the nav rockers, the cells should start to move up and down. They start their dancing routine.
Hang on. Sorry, they've all come up at the moment. So what have I done wrong then?
No, you haven't done anything wrong. Now press the little selector button above that nav rocker. The little the round button.
Oh yes.
And they should start dancing. There you go. I can hear them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, get those wipes that are in, I don't know what they call them, Sharon, you know the ones.
Yeah, they're actually called something in Danish, I think, but they're spectacle wipes. So if you went into Flying Tiger shops and asked for spectacle wipes, they're like I don't know, they're about €2 a box or something, or whatever the equivalent.
Yeah, it's dancing at the moment, but these two dots are still staying up all the time.
So they're the dots. This is why you need to send yours back. This is obviously the problem. Yeah. Now you could try the wipes, Phil, if you want beforehand, but
What? So do you put the wipes on while it's dancing then?
no, I would put the wipes on when it's not dancing.
Oh.
I would wipe while all the dots are raised, and I would wipe when all the dots are lowered. And I think, I don't know if James has probably cleaned lots of more of these than I've done. I don't know if there's anything else, James, that you do any differently. Or Matt, I know, is online. I don't know if Matt does anything differently, but that's what I normally do.
Maybe just stepped out or something, Stuart.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Any other questions before we tackle Windows?
No.
No, I don't think so. Okay. So give me a minute there, Stuart, and just see if I can do this. I'm just going to mute everybody so Stuart can continue with his presentation. Hold on. Okay, you're good to go, Stuart.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay. For this part of the presentation, I'm going to share my screen and share my JAWS audio. The downside to this is that you're going to hear occasional Zoom messages as people leave and enter the meeting room. So my apologies in advance for that. I'll try to make sure they are kept to an absolute minimum. So we're going to, for the rest of today, really, we're going to control my, my computer here with the Braille display. So I could pretty much, I have a keyboard sitting here. I could pretty much take this keyboard away if I wanted now. And I'm just going to take the Braille display in my hand. And we're going to now start screen sharing. So for those who can see, you'll now see my screen in just a moment. So I'm going to share my screen.
Started screen share.
Hopefully you can hear my JAWS. Now, all the Braille settings, and there are many, many of them, and we're not going to go through them all, by the way. All the Braille settings are found in the JAWS Settings Center, and as with everything in Windows, there are many ways to get there. I'm going to bring you there in a way that might be somewhat logical because it's where you would sort of generally flow into if you're using Braille. So let's get to the JAWS window first by pressing Insert and J.
JAWS Professional.
And let's press Alt and O.
Menu, Options menu, Basics.
And let's go down to Braille.
Voice Braille.
And by the way, just so people know, I'm doing all this now with the Braille display. So I've gone away from the QWERTY keyboard, and I'm using 6-dot entry. And I'll talk a little about the 6-dot entry in just a little while. So let's get in here to the Braille options.
Leaving menus, Braille basic settings dialog. The active Braille display is Focus. Default Braille display combo box. Focus 3 of 3.
The active Braille display is Focus. So this is JAWS. I've previously installed my Focus Braille display, again using Bluetooth. If you want to use USB, you simply connect your Focus Braille display to your computer by USB, and that's it. You do nothing else. JAWS picks it up. You don't even have to restart JAWS. If it's Bluetooth, you've got to pair your Braille display, again using those 4 zeros. How you pair it will kind of depend on your computer. So if it's Windows 10, there's a really nice Bluetooth assistant that's pretty straightforward. Again, if you have problems, give our tech support guys a call and we'd be happy to talk you through it. I'm going to press the Tab key at this point.
Modify settings button.
And I can modify settings for the Braille display. That will let me change if I was on Bluetooth and I want to switch this to USB, for example, I would go in here.
Add Braille display button.
This is a button to add a Braille display. So if I want to add another Braille display, I would go in here, and JAWS supports many Braille displays from many different vendors.
Advanced button.
And here's the advanced button. This is where we're going to go. And look what happens when we press enter.
Default all applications JAWS settings center dialog. Preview Braille open 6 items.
We're now brought right to the place we need to be in the JAWS settings center, but not only that, it's opened our default .jcf file so that any changes we make here will be affected globally. Like everything else in JAWS, you can have settings specific to particular applications. So there might be an instance, for example, where you don't want to use Braille in an application at all. So you might enable Braille sleep mode in a particular application. Or you might decide, you know something, when I'm in Microsoft Word, I'm reading documents, I just want to read in uncontracted Braille. And you could change that just for that application. So you can really manipulate this quite a bit. But I'm going to keep my global default settings open, and I'm going to press my down arrow.
1. General closed. 1 of 6. Braille.
So we're in the Braille options, and the first submenu is General. I'm going to open that menu by pressing my right arrow.
General open. 9 items.
And I'm going to down arrow.
2. Translation closed.
And I'm
1
going
of
to
9.
open my
General Braille.
translation options.
Translation open. 6 items. New notification from Samantha.
The translation options is where you're probably going to go early on in your Braille usage experience with Windows, because you want to make sure that the Braille is exactly as you like it. And I'll talk a little bit about this as we go along.
3. Language English United Kingdom. 1 of 6. Translation
So,
General.
English United Kingdom is the language that I have chosen. There is English US as well and English Australia. But there's a little, we can go a little bit further into English in a moment, as you'll see.
Output Unified English Braille Grade 2.
Here we go. So the output, what I'm going to read is Unified English Braille. Most English, in fact, all English-speaking countries now in the world have switched over to UEB, or Unified English Braille, and most of us are moving in that direction. If, by the way, I want to change any of the settings here, I can press the space bar to cycle through the available options. So let's just do that to show you.
Computer Braille 1 of 5. UK English Grade 1, 2 of 5. UK English Grade 2, 3 of 5. Unified English Braille Grade 1, 4 of 5. Unified English Braille Grade 2, 5 of 5.
There we go, back to UEB, Unified English Braille. Now I'll press my down arrow.
Input Computer Braille.
And I want to change my input to Unified English Braille.
Unified English Braille Grade 2, 2 of 2.
And my option, I only have Computer Braille or Unified English Braille Grade 2. That's because I already set my output as Unified English Braille Grade 2. The input is key because that's going to determine how I will be able to type in programs like Microsoft Word or Outlook in contracted Braille. And this is where this is really good.
Show current word in Computer Braille unavailable.
Show current word in Computer Braille is unavailable because we don't have Computer Braille selected.
Suppress capital signs not checked.
Suppress capital signs. If you are one of the people who just doesn't like capital signs in Braille, you can still get rid of them if you want by ticking this box.
Computer Braille tables unavailable. This option is only available when Braille output is set to Computer Braille.
That's self-explanatory, I think.
2. Braille mode structured. 2 of 9. General Braille.
Okay. There are different Braille modes, and this relates to how JAWS and the Braille display work together to get information to you, and probably more accurately, how JAWS sends information to the Braille display. Rather than me explaining this, I suppose I will hit the Tab key to read the little piece of explanatory text that is everywhere within Settings Center for every option.
Read only edit. Use this option to control the format of the information sent to the Braille display. When line mode is selected, JAWS sends the line of text at the current cursor position to the Braille display. When structured mode is selected, JAWS sends information to the display that is relevant to the current cursor position. The information sent includes things such as control type, dialog name, or number of items in the list. When speech output mode is selected, JAWS sends the same text to the display that it sends to the synthesizer. The default setting for this option is structured.
We would generally not vary away from structured mode, and I think most people are using structured mode.
Preview.
I'm shifting tabbing back to the list of options here.
Panning closed.
Panning. So here's our display panning. So let me go in here and explain one or two things to you.
Panning open. 5 items. 3. User pan mode automatic. 1 of 5. Panning General Braille.
User pan mode automatic. This essentially is the panning options will determine how the Braille display pans Braille. So let's read this and hear what it's
panning.
about.
Panning with your Braille display generally moves the display to the left or right by the length of the display. You do this by pressing the panning key on the Braille display. Select best fit to ensure that words are not cut off when panning. Select fixed increment to ensure the Braille display always pans the exact number of cells available on the display. Select maximize text to show the maximum amount of text that can fit on the Braille display. Select automatic to allow JAWS to choose the best method for showing text on the Braille display. The default selection is automatic.
There you go. So I would probably select automatic at all times. If you selected best fit, for example, you are almost certainly going to have words truncated across pannings, which is not very convenient. But some people may want that.
Auto pan mode automatic.
Auto pan mode is automatic, and I'll talk about auto pan mode in a moment.
Auto advance maximum interval 5000 milliseconds.
And the auto advance interval is how fast the Braille display advances when you're in auto pan mode or auto advance
Braille
mode.
presentation and panning use DOM except in edit controls.
I'm just going to move to
reverse panning buttons not checked.
You can reverse the panning buttons. So the panning buttons, the button to pan right would then pan left and vice versa if you choose to reorient them.
2. Active cursor follows Braille. Braille cursor follows active cursor checked.
And I'm
display text in 8. Braille mode not checked.
Yeah, 8. Mode Braille you can tick if you want. We don't have this ticked.
Enable Braille sleep mode not checked.
Enable Braille sleep mode is unticked, and
use this option to disable the Braille driver for a specific application. This checkbox is cleared by default.
So this is the one I was telling you about, where you might have an application where you choose not to have Braille at all. So in the configuration file relating to that application, you could enable the Braille sleep mode.
3 view. Enable word wrap checked.
That's a really important one. I don't see why you would not want to enable that unless you were trying to do your maximize number of Braille cells in use at any time.
Auto detect Braille display using Bluetooth not checked.
Auto detect Braille display using Bluetooth not checked. I'm actually going to tick this because I've been having funny connectivity problems in the last 2 days, and I think this is why. And I didn't realize this, so this session has been good for that. So let me change that to yes.
Checked.
So auto detecting means that JAWS will always look for my focus display when it starts up.
1. Braille marking closed.
I just want to talk a little
Braille.
bit about Braille marking for a moment. I remember having a chat with Matt Pateman, our training and support manager, about this, and Matt is, I think, on the call still. Braille marking will allow you to define and select markings for things like bold and attribute and highlight and all that kind of stuff. It can be really useful depending on what you're doing. So I do suggest you go in here and have a play around with it. I personally turn it all off because for me personally, it interferes with my reading, having extra dots 7 and 8 popping up when I'm trying to read text. But for some people, it's vital, particularly to get things like font and formatting attributes. So I definitely suggest you have a play around with those. When we've made all our changes,
apply button.
We press enter on apply.
Preview Braille read on OK button.
Or indeed enter on OK would have done the same thing.
Braille basic settings dialog.
And look, we're back to our basic settings in Braille.
Show OK, cancel button, OK button.
Press OK again.
JAWS Professional.
And press enter. So now I've at least set up some of my JAWS Braille settings, and there are many, many more of them. It just gives you a bit of a sense of what's there. I'm going to continue just a little bit more, and then I will take questions before we look at the Scratchpad. Let's just show you the power of this. I was telling you about using the Braille display, to drive Windows. So I'm using a Braille keyboard, my 8-dot, in this case, Braille keyboard, to do everything, to navigate within Windows and to obviously enter text as well. Now, Vispero have put a lot of thought into how this can be done, and they do it with combinations of chord commands and also, I suppose, layered commands. Everything centers around .8 and the spacebar, and then they add additional commands to do additional things. So if I was to press .8 with the spacebar and .4, that simulates pressing and holding the Windows key. So in a very basic example, if I press .8 with the spacebar followed by .4 and release them, and then press the letter D,
folder view, list view, zoom 72 of 72.
I'm on my desktop. If I press the letter if I press space with .8 followed by .4, I'm holding down the Windows key and then press the letter R.
Run dialog. Type the name of a program.
I'm in the run dialog. We mentioned Z with the space bar ages ago to exit out of a menu without saving. Z is the same in Windows. It's the escape key, so we press Z and space bar.
Desktop folder view.
Takes me out of the run option. If I want to know where I am at the moment, I want to issue the insert and T command, which is the title of the current window. I can press .8 with the space bar and .5 followed by T.
Desktop 1.
And I'm told I'm in desktop 1, which is my Windows desktop. These commands are all explained in some detail in the JAWS help options under Braille, and the area or topic you're looking for is JAWS Braille. It's not an easy thing to get your head around, I will certainly say. It takes a bit of time. Please let us know if we can help you or give you any assistance. But if you spend time learning these, it really is well worth it. I just want to show you very briefly, if I press the right shift key on the Braille display, we mentioned these shift keys with .4.
Search box edit.
I'm in the start menu, and if I type Word, Word should have come up, and I think Word hasn't come up.
Bing. Desktop folder view.
We don't want Bing, so I'm just going to cheat and do it from the run command.
Run dialog.
And run Microsoft Word.
Desktop folder view list view. Zoom 72 of 72. Opening Word.
And for purposes,
Document one word,
for purposes
edit.
of people who are particularly listening with speech, I'm going to turn my word echo on just so you can hear what's happening. So I'm going to press Insert and the number 2 on the keyboard.
Characters, words.
And I'm just going to say hello.
Hello, comma. This is a test with the Focus Braille display and Windows 10 period.
So I'm typing that in Braille, and in real time, for those who are seeing the screen share, that's appearing in print. Phenomenally useful when you're using something like this with an L Braille, which is this Windows tablet that doesn't even have a screen, just has a docking station for the Focus Braille display. Let's close Microsoft Word. Again, there are all sorts of key combinations with function keys.
Alt F4, file name, hello, file, save, menu, leaving menu, save button, more save,
that.
Don't save button.
Save, okay.
Folder view list.
Probably a good point, Sharon, to take a little pause and just bring in if there are any questions.
Yeah, Stuart, Phil, I was beginning to panic a bit because having done that test, I plugged in my USB plug so that it's wired up to the computer, and it kept coming up with all these error codes and kind of weird things to get back into using the Braille display. So once you're in that mode, how do you terminate out of it again?
The easiest way, Phil, is just power off the display and then just power it back on as normal.
I tried that and it didn't work. It just still kept coming up with input things and weird servers.
Okay, plug out the USB cable, power it off, and then just plug in the USB and it should power on automatically.
Yeah, well, I've got it right now. What I had to do was hold down those two, what do you call it, router keys.
Yeah.
And then it went back to normal.
Okay.
So I don't know.
There may be another way to exit cleaning mode without turning the thing off. I normally just power it off. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if there's another way, but there could be.
Okay, well, I think I've got it right now anyway.
Yeah.
But I've still got these two cells sticking up.
Yeah, so that definitely needs a proper cleaning. And as you say, there's probably a fault with it anyway. So if you liaise with the tech support guys, they'll be able to help you with that.
Yep, okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Bill. So just looking at chat here, Matt just came in and was saying when you were going through the Braille marking settings, you mentioned, you talked to Matt about that, Stuart. And he says it's definitely used mostly when editing documents.
Yes.
Really good. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thanks for that, Matt. And James, we were asking James something earlier, and he was kind of stuck on mute, but you should be able to unmute yourself now, James, if you wanted to. Sorry, I can't remember what we were asking.
I think we were, what did we ask James? I can't remember. Oh,
I asked him how much is the 80 character.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, yeah.
If you're out there, James. He's possibly stepped out there.
Oh, and I think we were asking James, was there any other routine we should perform when cleaning?
Alert.
That's right. Yeah.
Everyone. £7,656 and 75 pence.
The Braille, the cost of the set of the Braille display,
7,656.75, excluding VAT.
I think the question for James was, and Matt may know this, whether there is anything else you need to do when cleaning. So we were mentioning using these wipes from Tiger, which, by the way, Rob has been telling us today he has been unable to find locally here in Dublin, but we're hoping that's only a temporary thing.
Hi guys, it's only Matt.
Hi Matt.
Hello. I normally just get a soft brush, turn it upside down, and just give it a lovely little tickle.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Brilliant, thanks, Matt.
That's great. Yeah, I tend to use, you know, your toothbrushes when they're no longer good for brushing your teeth. I keep them and I use them to clean.
Okay, good to know.
There you go. Any other questions there?
See, when you're using the, excuse me, so when you're using the Braille display connected in with JAWS, Stuart, does the control cord, which I believe is enter space and .3, I think I might be right there.
Yeah.
Does that mute the speech? Because I've had some, when I've tried it, it might be because I'm using my L Braille, I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem to mute, work to mute the speech.
You're spot on, it doesn't. What you need to do from speech is press either of the shift keys. So if I maybe try to demo it now.
Desktop 1.
I've just pressed a shift key there.
I wondered how you were doing that. Right, okay.
Hi,
Thanks.
everybody, I'm back as well.
Sorry.
Hello?
Sorry, James is back.
Oh,
Hi,
James.
Sorry, technical issues.
No problem. I think we were just asking, there was a bit of a discussion on cleaning Braille displays. If you had any other tips, we were talking about the wipes from Tiger and Sharon.
Yeah, one tip is to actually clean them upside down as well.
I think Matt was saying that, yeah. And price for the Focus 480, we have got that from Toby, so that's
yeah, I know, I've seen that on the chat.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, would we have a look at the Scratchpad then, Sharon?
Oh yeah, great. Well, I'm going to mute everyone again. Bear with me a sec.
The host has muted all parties.
There you go, Stuart.
Okay. Right.
Alert, you are unmuted by host.
So we're going to look at the Scratchpad. The Scratchpad is a built-in basic, I would say,
notification from Samantha.
For the Focus.
New notification from Samantha.
Sorry, I'm getting loads of notifications. Apologies. It's a basic notepad, basic text editor that was incorporated into the Focus post-release. So it came in the first big upgrade to the firmware, I think about a year ago now. Very handy for writing quick messages, taking down phone numbers. I was on the phone the other day. I was on my mobile actually to somebody, and I needed to write a number that they were giving me, but obviously I couldn't really disconnect my phone or connect my phone to my Braille display while I was talking on it, so I found the Scratchpad really useful. But it has another use that I will show you right now. When you're away from your computer and away from your phone and you just have your Focus, the Scratchpad can be really handy. And I've had two occasions recently where I had to go to meetings, one of which for our local residents society, I was given the unenviable task, because nobody else wanted to do it, of taking the minutes. So I used the Scratchpad on my Focus, and I'll just give you a sense of how that works. Just to demonstrate this, I'm going to open Microsoft Word again.
Run dialog. Type the name of a program, folder, document, or internet resource, and Desktop. Folder view. List view. Sight and Sound Summer School 2019 Session 1. Sharpening your shortcuts with Sharon Lyons. 62 of 72. Opening. Opening Word. Document 1.
Plug there for Sharon. Now I have my Microsoft Word open with a blank document. I'm going to just leave that sitting on the screen for a moment, and maybe actually if I unshare my screen, we'll get back to video so people can at least see
JAWS meeting controls.
Doing.
Alert. Here's.
So we're back on video now, hopefully, and I'm going to press the menu key with the letter N on my Braille display, N for Nora, N for Notepad, to enter the Notepad. Now what's happened is I'm temporarily disconnected or paused in my connection from my computer, and I'm in my Notepad. And I have a flashing cursor here on the very left of my Braille display with dots 7 and 8. I can now start typing in Braille. The key thing here is you've got to make sure you type in the grade and code of Braille that you have set in your JAWS settings, because what this is literally going to do is dump the text back over to JAWS in a minute when we ask it to do it. So I'm literally going to say, hello, this is a test for the Scratchpad using the Focus Braille display and outputting to JAWS. Now, the Scratchpad doesn't have word wrap, for example. So as you're reading through this, when you pan, you may find that words break up. I think the Scratchpad is one of those features that they're definitely going to enhance in the future. The Scratchpad looks very like Windows Notepad. So it has a file menu and it has an edit menu. You can save documents to your memory card. You can open documents. You can even read BRF files. So if you've downloaded or exported a BRF file from somewhere, you can do that as well. I'm going to press the the menu key with the letter M now, M for menu. And on my Braille display, I see File. If I press space with dot 4, I see Edit. This is in uncontracted Braille, by the way, because remember now we are essentially just looking at the Focus, at the internal application in the Focus. So all our JAWS translation is gone for the moment. File, Edit, and the next option is Export. This is going to export to my computer. So what I need to make sure I do now is have my computer ready for Microsoft Word. So I'm going to start my screen share again. And I'm going to make sure my computer sound is ticked. So let's start screen sharing, and I will go back to Microsoft Word.
Document 1 Word.
And
Edit.
On my Braille display says the word export. So I'm going to press enter. And my text is hopefully going to export in a moment.
Blank, blank.
Or possibly not. This worked in the rehearsal.
And outputting the JAWS.
Okay,
blank.
So it's after.
And hello, this is a test for the
it's now after essentially transferring this text from my Notepad or my Scratchpad application across to my Microsoft Word. Sometimes it will actually tell you it's transferring. You'll be able to hear JAWS speak. I didn't hear JAWS speak in this instance, but we know that it is there, and we can see it now in Microsoft Word in contracted Grade 2 Braille. So the Scratchpad is handy if you're away from your computer, you're away from any kind of storage media, and you want to make notes, but you want to be able to put those notes somewhere else afterwards. You're not going to write a masterpiece you're using the Scratchpad. You're not going to do any kind of sophisticated editing, and you'll be saving your documents as BRF files. So they're not something you can share with a lot of people, but you can get them back into somewhere that you can share them, whether that's Microsoft Word or indeed an application on iOS. For example, I often use the Notes app on my phone to dump stuff in from the Scratchpad. All those stuff have good uses. So let me close Microsoft Word.
File name, save as type combo, menu, leaving menu, save button, don't save.
And I just want to flag a couple of
Folder view
things
list.
because Stuart actually reminded me just of a few quick keys that might be of help to Focus users. So Stuart was asking about stopping the speech, and either of the shift keys will do that. But just to give you a little sense of what other things the shift keys can do, and again, all this is listed in the user guide. The right shift with the letter L for Lima.
16:27.
Will tell you the time, so that's the equivalent of pressing insert and F12. The right shift with the letter K.
Select the system tray icon dialog. Select the system.
Will bring you into the system tray.
Folder view list view. Side and sound.
We already mentioned on iOS that you can use space with dots 1, 2, 3 to get to the top, and space dots 4, 5, and 6 to get to the bottom of any file, and those commands obviously work as well within JAWS. So it's a hugely powerful system when you get to learn it. And the easiest way I've found, by the way, to learn the JAWS Braille input commands on the L Braille, I was doing this, but I think regardless of what you're doing, is use it with a QWERTY keyboard for the moment, so that you have something to fall back on if you really struggle to remember something. But over time, you'll find that the commands just go into your head without too much of an effort as you use it gradually. Now, Sharon, I think I'm happy to take questions, and if there's anything else comments-wise. Just one very quick thing. I said I'd mention auto scroll earlier on. I think I didn't come back to that. On the Focus Braille display, we mentioned these selector buttons. They're called selector buttons on the front edge. When you press the two of these buttons together, the Braille display will auto scroll.
Alert, Mark Higgins has left the meeting.
That means you don't have to pan manually with the Braille display. It will automatically pan. You can use the right selector button to increase the speed of the panning or the auto scroll, and the left selector button to slow it down. And you can switch off auto scroll by, again, pressing the two selector buttons together. I should stress that this is a JAWS feature. It does not work on iOS. We've had lots of people asking about auto scroll on iOS. That's because the Braille display is driven by the screen reader on which it's connected to. So if the feature isn't in the screen reader, there's not much the Braille display can do about it. So thanks, Sharon, and I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant session. We're just nearly at 4:30 there, but we can do a few more questions. But I just wanted to let people know before I forget again that all these sessions are being recorded and will be on our Audio Boom channel. So I'm just going to put that into the chat, the link to our Audio Boom channel.
Alert, Sharon Lyons to every.
And where you can access all the recordings this week as they happen, or shortly after. And I'll just unmute everybody so you can ask some final questions there.
Yeah, Phil here, Stuart. As I haven't got a menu key on my particular Focus 15, is there an alternative command that I could use?
No, unfortunately not, Phil. So because you have the older Focus, you also don't have the Scratchpad. Okay. So unfortunately that whole last slot is not directly relevant to you at this moment.
All right, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions there?
Stuart, I'll just quickly say, it's not a question, just a comment. Just thank you very much for the session, because you've given me two very, very good Braille commands that I didn't know. The space .36 for the double tap, if you like, and the right shift key. That one was driving me mad because I could not work out how to, mute speech quickly on the L Braille or on the Focuses. So thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow if you're in the tech surgery.
You're very welcome, Stuart. And yeah, we'll be there tomorrow. And actually, just one quick, I'll give you another command, although you might have this one already, because of course the shift commands, unfortunately, on iOS have no function at all. They don't work, and they can't even be programmed to work. And that's a restriction of Apple. But you can press space with P, that I love, on iOS to do the same thing, to stop the speech.
Okie doke, thanks, Stuart.
You're very welcome.
Great questions, everyone. Actually, I'm sure a lot of other people have benefited from the excellent questions you've been asking.
So you can use insert space S, can't you, to mute the speech as well on JAWS?
You can, and you can also, let me make sure I do this right before I tell you, space, if I just very quickly share my screen again so you can hear this. Sorry now.
Speech on demand.
Sorry, Stuart. You were muted there for some reason. I'm not sure what happened.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Speech on demand.
Oh, here we go. Oh, no, hang on. I'm trying to unmute you, I promise. There you go, you're back. I don't know what happened
I'm
there.
not sure what happened there. Sorry, it may have been some quirky thing with the Braille display.
But possibly you might have muted yourself.
I think so. Basically, right shift and M will mute, and right shift and M will unmute. It's a toggle switch.
Interesting, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Great. Anything else?
No, not from me anyway.
No worries.
This is Nin. I Focus, I think, a few weeks ago. But then I noticed that there is a latest update, is 81.50, I think. But mine is 81.40.
I just need to check. Your firmware, is that it?
Yeah. Just a minute. I will check because this is that there's a new update for Focus 14 5th generation, you know. But mine, I just cannot. Just wondering why mine is new, but it's not in the latest firmware.
Do you have the Scratchpad on yours?
Yeah, I got one.
If you have the Scratchpad, you're on the latest.
Yeah, but then there's the latest. There is more latest.
I'm not aware, unless something has been released literally today or yesterday. I honestly don't know. I don't know if Matt is or James is still online if there, but my understanding is the latest version is Scratchpad. There may be
5.81 -4. The latest now is 5.81.50.
Yeah, I just have a entry on chat from Matt there. The 5.81-50 is available from the Freedom site website. So,
yeah.
Okay, and there would.
I'll
have to go and update that. There will be instructions on updating. I haven't even seen the link to that update yet, so not sure what new and exciting stuff there is in there. So obviously, if you need help updating it, if you need help updating yours, just give us a shout.
Yeah, I guess I need someone to assist me on how to update mine.
So again, if you send an email to the tech support@sightandsound.co.uk, those guys will be able to give you a hand.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Matt has just put the link. It's just sent the link to me, so I'm going to put that on the chat.
Brilliant.
Now, hopefully, if that works. Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, guys and girls, I'm going to quit then, yeah?
Yep,
Yeah, thank you,
I think
Phil.
that's all for today. And thank you, Stuart, for an excellent 1.5 hours on the Focus. If you've just recently got a Focus, I think that was just heaven sent, really. Brilliant timing. And so tomorrow, hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow at the tech surgery. And that will be at the usual time, 3 o'clock UK and Irish time, until 4:30. So I look forward to meeting you all again virtually there, and have a good evening.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a million.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.